us for today's conversation is Representative Gene Wu. We're here in Houston in his office recording in House District 137. Representative Wu, thanks for joining us for the conversation
Thank
today.
you so much. I'm glad you guys are here.
Also an LBJ School alum, so I don't know if we're supposed to do like a sign or something.
I don't think we have no handshake. We have no.
We need to work on that. We should call
do
somebody.
A hook
Yeah.
It's all good.
So we are here in the middle of summer. You do have a part-time job with the Texas legislature.
Yeah.
It feels like you've been doing way more than part-time work during this year. Have you caught up on your rest since you've been home?
A little bit. And, for the last couple of sessions, both have just dragged on so long, and it's taken up so much of, my personal life. And, when the legislature is in, I don't make money, and most of the other members don't either. So we're still trying to catch up, still trying to decompress, but we're in special session after special session now.
Well, I'm hoping you get some rest over the course of the next year and a half, and maybe a little bit of work this fall. But really do appreciate you spending a portion of your life doing it. We are in the middle of this legislative wrap-up series, and one of the things I like to start with is the positives. I know we tend to dwell on all the things that went wrong or might still be going wrong, but you did have a chance to do some good work this session. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of or that you feel good about?
Look, probably our biggest work is always in appropriations, working on the budget and getting stuff that we think actually makes a real big difference. I think probably our biggest lift during this session was like we snuck in a $50 million rider to the budget that would go for direct mental health support for kids in school. So part of as we looked at the Uvalde, the Robb Elementary School shooting, and you read the reporting, and there's red flag after red flag where teachers, APs, classmates all noted that this kid is off. This kid has real problems. Why didn't we do anything about it? And the answer is, well, with what resource? And so we put in $50 million for the whole state to try to get resources directly to those kids and have mental health support for those families before it becomes a big problem.
Right. One of the things that I do want to talk about today, since we're in Houston and you represent Houston, is it feels like from the beginning of session, there was an attack on Houston.
Sure.
Specifically. And we talked off air about
Harris
County, right. About all of the different ways that happened. Can you talk some to our listeners about what exactly happened? How was Harris County targeted? Maybe how your community is responding to that?
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing to remember is that the legislature and mainly the Republicans need somebody to beat up every session.
Right.
So last session, it was Austin. This session, it's Harris County. And, for the most part, the Republicans and the conservatives always rail on about virtue signaling. This is like virtue signaling at its worst.
Right.
Where they basically need to show their people, yeah, we're going to take care of those people, those Democrats who keep beating our people after we spent $30 million in Harris County and they still won. We got to show them what's up. And that was basically what this point was. So a lot of the bills, especially the elections bills that say just say that you couldn't have an office named this, but yet you can have all the same functions.
Right.
Why? What was the point of that? What does that do? We spent so much time on it, and the state's going to be wrapped up in litigation for years on it, and it served absolutely no purpose because the same exact job will be done by somebody else with just a different title. That's it.
Right. You talked about elections. Talk some about schools. Are people paying attention here in your community to what's happening with Houston ISD?
Yeah, so I think HISD takeover by the state is just really one of the really, really sour points of what's been going on. And I think, the way we talked about it is look, if you want to know what Republicans want for the rest of the state, take a look at what's happening in HISD, sort of the takeover, the drowning out of parents, the removal of democracy, and turning our schools into prisons. This is what's coming for the rest of the state. When we have this voucher fight and people go, oh, where are we going with this? This is where we're going. So if you can, get all the rich kids out of the schools, you get all the affluent kids out of the school, and then the remaining, whoever's left, we'll turn it into a prison.
Right.
And this is really disturbing because not only is it anti-democratic, It's un-American, but it's sort of like a slow motion dystopian nightmare that's coming true before our eyes, and everyone seems to just be okay with it. I mean, obviously, except for the people who are having to live through it.
Right. I have a family member who lives in another part of the state who called and was talking with me about this and said, I looked at our school district and I looked at all the school districts that I've lived in over my life, and they're all performing worse than Houston ISD. So why is it that this community in particular is being targeted? I guess, first of all, why do you think that is? And second, are people here in Houston paying attention? Are they noticing the same thing?
I mean, I think definitely the people here are noticing, and I promise you they'll notice this fall when their kids go back to school and there are no teachers.
Right.
Because what's happening is, even before the takeover, we already had an incoming teacher shortage, and because we didn't give teachers a pay raise, and we still haven't given teachers a pay raise yet. And teachers are like the Butts Foundation, Charles Butts Foundation report basically said 75% of teachers last year were already actively looking for another job, right, in public education. And now you have a situation where they're taking over the school district. They no longer care about the voices of the teachers. They no longer care about the voices of the parents. They're doing whatever the hell they want. They're doing things that are counterintuitive and completely against established norms. And they're expecting people to just be okay with that. Teachers are not coming back. I would guess that the HISD will have probably a 20% teacher shortage. And when we have to cut school classrooms down to 4 days a week, or cut music programs, cut art programs, cut PE, cut whatever they need to cut to make it work, then parents will really get the feel for this, and people are going to be upset.
I want to talk a little bit more about your district, 137, because I've heard you talk publicly several times about how unique your district is in Texas.
Sure.
Both economically, in terms of demographics. Talk some about your district and how the Texas legislature, the actions of the Texas legislature are going to impact your district, maybe especially along the lines of economic justice issues.
So I think a few important points to note is, one, my district is the lowest voter turnout district in the entire state.
Right.
And the reason for that is because my district is an immigrant district. The vast majority, like 70% of the district, are direct, either immigrants or first generation. So, just as I am.
Right.
And many of the people here are undocumented. Many of the people here are refugees. And very few people are able to vote, and very, very few people of those actually do vote. And the second thing to consider is that this is the largest concentration of renters in the entire state. My district is like 85% renters. Right. And the next closest district is in the low 60s.
Wow.
So, and it sort of creates this mechanism where people don't have their voices heard. And, what they did in redistricting, they shoved more apartments into the district, right? So the people are already disadvantaged. They don't know how, they're often afraid to speak up. They're afraid they don't speak up. And that sets up a scenario where they're the most vulnerable, but yet have the least amount of ability to defend themselves. Right. And that's what I deal with on a daily basis.
Were there any policies passed that you feel like especially impacted the district?
Oh, absolutely. So, the easiest was what happened in the last special session is that we passed this massive $18 billion top property tax relief, and 85% of my district will not benefit one dime.
Right.
Because they said, the argument was, well, we're going to give the relief to property owners, to the landlords, and landlords will reduce rent.
And pray real hard that they're going to pass that down. Right?
And I'm like, what reality do you live in where there is a housing shortage and landlords are going to reduce rent?
Right.
Anyone who has ever lived in an apartment knows that's a lie, right? That's complete fabrication. And it is, I want to say like it's wishful thinking, but you would have to believe that that's actually possible for it to be wishful thinking. Like, don't look at me with a straight face and say, yes, landlords are going to reduce rent while there is a housing shortage, right? When people are demanding, looking for places to go. And that money, that $18 billion belongs to renters as well. That's right. 40% of the state rent. And 40% of the state contributed to the surplus that we have today, and they will receive nothing.
So if you had your way, pie in the sky, what would we have done with that money?
So look, outside of property taxes and all that stuff, look, what we should have done was done long-term investment. If I had the magic wand, if I was governor, I would have said, take that money, put it into investment funds, and then make the gains from those funds, make it dedicated funds into education, into healthcare, into taking care of teachers' retirement, state employees' retirement. For example, teachers' retirement. Every single session, we're on appropriations. TRS comes to us and says, hey, look, we're going to have a shortfall in 10 years. And if you put in $3 billion now, then we will have no shortfall and everything will be fine. And what does the legislature do? We put in $1 billion. And then we come back next session and we say, well, we're going to have a shortfall in 10 years because you only put in $1 billion 2 years ago. We still need $3 billion right now in order for us not to have to pay $10 billion down the road. And what do? We put in $1 billion. And then we do the cycle. And now this time we put in a little more, but we still didn't do it all the way. It was like, look, I don't understand. Everyone keeps talking like, let's run the state like a business. But this is a very clear, easy mathematics. It's like, just do it now, pay up front and save money down the road. But we keep doing it this way. Same with state employees and everything else. We put in a lot of money to build every single project. And I can't complain because, like Harris County, Houston area, we got money to build stuff too.
Right.
But the problem is, those things are great. It's one-time things. It's a finite amount of money. But there's a lot of stuff that we said, like, look, these are problems that we really need to fix. The state employees got a very small raise. They got like a 3% raise at best, okay? Inflation is more than that. Right? And they were already underpaid before the inflation hit. So state employees are like, we're grateful, but, I'm not sure this changes anything. I think, and even worse, for teachers. Texas teachers are already some of the worst paid in the nation, especially if you go to the rural areas. Teachers are quitting en masse. We're having shortages everywhere. Rural communities are already moving to a 4-day school week, right? It's happening in front of our eyes. But yet, did we provide additional funding for increasing teacher pay? No. In fact, it was stripped out. Right? It was killed. And what could we have done with that? Basically, it's almost like $50 billion, if you're including rainy day fund and everything else. We could have done a lot. We could have put in investments in a lot of things, and we should have that the $18 billion that we spent on property tax relief. Instead of giving that back, we should have reduced future tax needs by investing that money and putting that fund to pay for stuff so that we don't have to increase revenue for increase taxes for other things down the road, right? But we're looking for the showpiece. We have to have something to go back to the community. Hey, we gave you this one-time check, this one-time relief. Are we going to have that surplus next time? Absolutely not. That surplus was because of COVID, and God forbid we have COVID again or another pandemic, but that same tax relief is not going to be there 2 years down the road. And we've essentially blew $18 billion for a one-time political show.
Right. What do you need, or what do we need listeners to do to ensure that our public policy more closely reflects the values that your constituents hold?
Yeah, I think what I would like, and this is not just Texas, this is the entirety of the nation,
Right.
is people need to start paying attention. And so much of what happens in the Texas legislature, in Congress, or sometimes what doesn't happen, such as dealing with gun reform, dealing with education reform, dealing with a lot of things, healthcare reform, immigration reform, all these things that the vast majority of Americans, and even the often majority of Republicans, say we should be doing these things, but we don't. And yet, if you talk to the average person on the street, it's like, do you know what the legislature has done? Do you know what Congress has done this year? And they go, no, what's that? What's Congress, right? I thought Congress and the state legislature were the same thing.
Yeah, how often do you get called congressman, right?
All the time, right?
Right.
So often what people are able to do in the middle of the night behind closed doors, they're able to do that because people don't pay attention, right? And you have people like Democrats screaming and shouting that that these things are being done, and like nobody pays attention, nobody cares. And I think just like the HISD issue, people won't care until it slaps them in the face. But the problem is with that is by the time it slaps you in the face, it's too late, right? And then we're doing triage, and then we're doing crisis management instead of, just doing policy.
Right. We're going to be here in Houston in a couple of weeks with a Houston Faith Votes kickoff series, and I know you've graciously volunteered to speak at one of those, so thank you. What do you wish Houston congregations, what do you wish people in Houston would do to encourage people to pay attention? What does it look like if we're doing that well?
Look, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church,
right.
And that was a whole thing by itself, I don't have enough money to go for all the therapy I need for that after that. But my message to people of faith always is like, look, whether you believe in the Bible or the Torah or you read the Quran, or every single major religion says some very common things. Take care of people.
Love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor, love your enemies.
Yeah.
Right? Take care of heal the sick. Feed the hungry, clothe the poor. All these basic things, visit the prisoner, right? And if you say that these are your core beliefs and these are your core tenets, and if you say like literally, if you are a Christian, Matthew 25 comes out and says it, Jesus says it himself out of his own mouth, says, the way you will be judged is how you treat the least of us.
Amen.
Right? And if this is your core faith, this is the end all be all of your faith, and the people around you who also profess this faith do the exact opposite, and you say nothing, and you do nothing, what faith do you really have? What is the point of having a faith? What is point of having a belief if it means nothing? Why do you call yourself a Christian if you don't live and essentially demand that people, all the other Christians who call themselves Christian, that do these things? Right? This last legislative session, we spent all this time just beating up on people.
Right.
Beating up on people who are defenseless. Beating up on people who have no money, who have no power, right? Finding the people who in society who have already been ostracized and just kicking them in the mouth.
Right.
How can you go there? Like, I'm not a biblical scholar, but like everything that I know about the life of Jesus and what is called for in the Bible says we should be doing the opposite.
Right.
But yet every single legislative session, the majority party who on their Twitter bio says Christian first. That burns my soul.
Yeah.
It hurts, right? Because I want to say I'm a Christian, but I don't want to be associated with those people. I don't want to be labeled with them who say they're hypocrites, they're false believers. How do you believe that? How do you say you believe this stuff and yet do the exact opposite? And then for the people of faith, hold people accountable, right? Just as like the Bible says, we were supposed to hold each other accountable. Then do it. Don't just say, well, Republicans are good on taxes. Therefore, let's slide not taking care of the poor. We'll slide not healing the sick. We'll slide, everything else.
Yeah, so for those people of faith who do care about the marginalized, who do care about making their community a better place and healing the sick and visiting the prisons and caring for the poor and all that, what do you hope that they'll do in your community and the Houston area and beyond to hold people accountable and to make sure that our elected representatives represent the whole of the community and not just the small percentage that show up?
Words are cheap. Anyone can say that they're Christian and they do all these things or whatever you believe in, whatever your faith is. Anyone can say, I am faithful. Anyone can say, I believe these things. But what do people actually do? And that's what I want people of faith to recognize. Stop simply listening to the words of those who are in office, but look at what they actually do. Look at what they vote for. Look at the things they push, right? And take a full measure of what happens. Don't just say, well, they are against abortion, but they also cut school funding for school lunches, right? And those things, don't just balance each other out, right? Look at the totality of what people do.
Yeah.
So
we are kind of in the interim. I guess we've got probably another session coming up, but it is entering election season. Local races coming up soon. Primaries in March. General election next November. What do you hope listeners will do during the interim if they care about public policy issues here in Texas?
I really hope that people actually go and research and look at what's being done, look at all the things that were passed, and I hope they come to the conclusion that Republicans have simply gone too far in everything they've done. We essentially the state legislature has stopped working on things in a cooperative way that makes sure that everyone's taken care of. Instead, we're almost solely focused on how much attention, how much time, and how much energy was devoted purely for things that don't matter, that affects almost no one. You ban books, right? How does that help anybody? Right. You banned, I want to say drag shows, but it's not drag shows. They banned sexy dancing, right? So essentially every cheerleading squad, every dance squad, every whatever is now against the law. Well, who does that serve? How does that help, right? We're worried about DEI stuff. Like we're concerned that Black people, Latinos, gay people, veterans, the disabled, women actually have a fair shot in hiring and have a fair shot in college admissions. And we took that away. Who does that serve? How does that help the average Texan? And we can just go down the line. We spent dozens and dozens of these bills that do nothing but virtue signal to the Republican primary base.
Right.
And at some point, nothing will change until the general public, the voting public, says, this stuff is crazy, right? This everything that you guys spend time on, that doesn't help me, right? And we need to start voting like that. We need to start voting that those things matter. And we say, like, we should not be voting for people who are actually just trying to stay reelected in their primaries and not worrying about what actually moves the state forward. 40% of the state who live in apartments, who live in rental units, should be voting against Republicans who said, you get nothing. We are leaving you out of this feast that we're having.
Right. Really appreciate the time today. Any closing thoughts or shameless plugs you'd like to leave us with?
I just hope everyone gets out there. Like just simply voting is not enough.
Right.
Just voting is not enough. You got to go out there and you have to advocate. You have to get people registered. You have to go talk to your friends, talk to your families, let them know what's going on. Talk to them. Don't just let them say, oh, I don't vote. I'm not into politics. Well, whether or not you want to be in politics, politics is going to be in you. So either you deal with it or you're going to wait, or later on, you're going to have to wait until they get the boot off your neck.
Right. I was planning on asking if we could close out with a dance, but now you've got me worried that I might be breaking the law. So
don't dance.
We'll probably avoid that. Representative, we really appreciate the time, really appreciate the work that you do both in Austin and here in the district.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything.
Appreciate it.